Hi, my name is Brett Stewart, and today I'll be talking about Edward Thorndike and his contributions to educational psychology. This project is for Dr. Longing and his class, Psychological Foundations of Teaching. In the early life of Edward Thorndike, he was born August the 31st, 1874 in Williamsburg, Massachusetts. He was the son of a farmer and a teacher, which influenced his interest in education. Thorndike showed early signs of intellectual curiosity and a passion for learning. Here's a picture of Thorndike. His education and early influences. He did attend Wesleyan University, where he earned his bachelor's degree in the year 1895. He was influenced by prominent educators and psychologists like William James. I'm going to mention William James and a couple other psychologists and physiologists that greatly influenced Edward Thorndike later in the presentation. And we'll get to those in just a moment. His early academic experiences shaped his future research interests in psychology and education. Thorndike began his career as a teacher and a researcher at Teachers College at Columbia University. He did get married. He married his wife Elizabeth in 1900, and they had 3 children. And his family provided a supportive environment for his academic pursuits and goals. Now let's talk about the influences. He was greatly influenced by William James and John Dewey and Ivan Pavlov. William James, pictured here, a prominent psychologist and philosopher, greatly influenced Edward Thorndike's thinking. His emphasis on pragmatism and functionalism shaped Thorndike's approach to learning and behavior. James's ideas on the importance of experience in shaping knowledge resonated with Thorndike's experimental methods. John Dewey also influenced Thorndike quite a bit. He was a prominent philosopher and educator known for his progressive education philosophy. He emphasized experiential learning and the importance of democracy in education. Dewey believed that education should be relevant to students' lives and encourage critical thinking. Famous Pavlov. Ivan Pavlov was a Russian physiologist, best known for his work in classical conditioning. His experiments with dogs demonstrated how stimuli can be associated with responses. Pavlov's finding laid the groundwork for behaviorism and influenced educational practices, pictured here. Thorndike's career, he did become a leading figure in educational psychology, focusing on learning processes. He developed innovative methods for measuring intelligence and educational outcomes, and his work emphasized the application of psychological principles to improve teaching practices. Here's one of his works, Educational Psychology, from 1903. Now let's get to kind of know his foundational work, his work called Animal Intelligence, which he published as his dissertation in the year 1898. Now this work focused on associative processes in animals and established the basis for future research in learning and in behavior. He identified trial and error as the primary learning method for animals. He conducted experiments with animals and problem-solving scenarios, as you see one example pictured here with the cat and the string and the lever trying to figure out how to open the trap door. And he found out that learning occurs incrementally rather than through just sudden insight. Thorndike's learning theory. He developed the concept of connectionism, which is the bond between stimulus and response. He introduced the stimulus response theory, the SR theory, and he focused on the neural connections that facilitate learning. Connectionism and stimulus response theory. Connectionism is Thorndike's theory that emphasizes the connections between stimuli and responses in the learning process, as I kind of mentioned a moment ago. It posits that learning occurs through the formation of associations, where a stimulus triggers a specific response. The strength of these connections is influenced by the frequency and context of the stimulus-response interactions. This theory laid the groundwork for behaviorism, highlighting the importance of observable behaviors in understanding learning. Thorndike is well known for his laws of learning, or also called his primary law of learning. He proposed 3 fundamental laws of learning: the law of readiness, the law of exercise, and the law of effect. The law of readiness states that learners must be prepared to learn. Motivation is key for effective learning. The law of exercise emphasizes that connections between stimulus and response are strengthened through practice and repetition. The law of effect suggests that responses followed by satisfying outcomes are more likely to be repeated, while those followed by discomfort are less likely to recur or to be repeated. Interestingly, there were some changes in Thorndike's theory kind of after the year 1930, post-1930. He revised some of his theories based on some new evidence. He discarded the law of exercise and maintained only part of the law of effect. And then he introduced this concept called the spread of effect in learning. Thorndike did continue to write and research until his later years, contributing to many fields. I think he contributed to maybe 500 pieces of literature in his career, his works and other people's works. He passed away finally August the 9th, 1949, leaving a lasting legacy in psychology and education. And his work continues to be studied and referenced in contemporary educational practices even today. Thorndike's work remains relevant in psychology and education, in both fields. His focus on empirical evidence set a standard for future research, and he continues to influence contemporary educational practices. Thorndike's principles of learning and assessment are foundational in our modern education system. His emphasis on empirical research has shaped evidence-based teaching strategies, which that's the way it ought to be. Current educators such as myself utilize his theories to enhance student engagement and learning outcomes. In conclusion, the impact of Thorndike will be long-lasting. It will have endurance. It's going to last way past the date of this presentation. It's been here for a long time, since the early 1900s, and it will continue to influence the way that we teach and the way that we learn, the way that we research, and the way that we see evidence, and we can interpret the evidence to make ourselves better teachers, better scientists, better researchers altogether. His contributions continue to influence educational psychology and teaching methods. It's impressive that he is so important in both fields. And his focus on learning processes and empirical evidence remain vital in education today. He's really known for his evidence-based conclusions, which is fundamental in continuing a legacy of academic teaching and academic success as we move on in the future. Here are some of my sources that I've made for this presentation. You see many of his works, Thorndike's works, as well as some of people who influenced him. Thank you for listening to this presentation on Edward Thorndike. He is an interesting figure in history, and we can learn much from him.